In February of 2021, we interviewed a variety of different test subjects from cities chosen at random across the United States to see what people really knew about money, the one object above all others that is central to every aspect of their daily lives. Please state your name for the record, sir. My name is Jessup Thanos. Question is, do you think you know a lot about money, sir? Yeah, of course I know a lot about money. Been making it my whole life. What's there to know? I've made it, I've borrowed it, I've even stolen it. Let's get to the questions. Sure. My name's Nathaniel Laviolette. My friends call me Kid Charlemagne. You can call me Kid Charlemagne if you want. Would you say you know a lot about money? Yeah, of course I know a lot about money. You must have reviewed my application before conducting this interview. You saw where I went to school. University of Berkeley. An undergraduate degree from the University of Berkeley is like a graduate degree anywhere else. Of course I know a lot about money. Trevor Fishman. Trevor, do you think you know a lot about money? Can you define money? Do you mean currency, United States denomination, other foreign currencies, European Union? We'll limit our discussion to the United States. Do you know a lot about US dollars? Yes, I would think I would be able to discuss that topic. Where does money come from? For example, the origin of a single US dollar. Where does it come from? Where did it come from? Well, a bank. It would have to come from a bank, right? Well, Mr. Thanos, what we mean then is, where does the bank get their money? Well, from depositors. The bank lends out the money from the depositors, right? Then, Mr. Thanos, where do the depositors get their money? The origin. Origin? Originally come from? The government. I don't know. I just make money. I don't know where it comes from. When I get my money, people already have it. I don't know. I never thought through that. You tell me. Where does money come from? For example, the origin of a single US dollar. Come on. You asking Kid Charlemagne something like that? Do you know where I went to school? I went to Berkeley. The answer is very complicated. I don't think you would understand my answer. It relates to derivatives, the exponential function, economic and world bodies like the World Economic Forum. I'm going to pass because you wouldn't understand. Where does money come from? The origin of, say, a single US dollar. Before I answer that, is there any grade being given at the end of this? Will it be made public? There's no grade, sir. Good. No right answers, wrong answer? I guess there would have to be a right answer. It would have to involve the Federal Reserve of some kind, the central banks in other countries, but where do they get it? They issue like a bond or something, but they issue the bond. Where does that money come from? They have to make it up somewhere. It has to come from somewhere. They make it up. There's no other explanation. They have to just create it, right? There's no money tree as far as the last time I looked. Based on the three responses we're highlighting in this documentally, Mr. Fishman's response or answer was closest to being right, but still left a lot to be desired. But this was indicative of our findings throughout the study, throughout the United States. Over 99% of those interviewed couldn't tell us accurately where money comes from, the origination, how it comes into being. The answer is the Federal Reserve, and many, though, were able to quote the Federal Reserve, but they didn't understand how money comes into existence. Money, or the US dollar, always needs to be attached to a debt instrument. Now, this hocus-pocus power of the Federal Reserve does extend down to their little subminions, or little deviants, which are the banks. But again, people completely unaware that the Federal Reserve and the banks don't get their money from the Treasury or from the government or from anywhere else. The banks, for example, when you get a $300,000 mortgage, 90% of the money in the mortgage that is put into your account so you can go to closing is made up, created out of thin air at the bank itself. People were completely unaware that the bank will create 90% of the mortgage basically by typing on a keyboard and creating a ledger account that then the person will then slave away for 30 years to pay back with interest. Why does U.S. debt in the trillions go up year after year? Well, I don't watch it, but Fox News is right, I would think. These politicians can't control their spending. They can't ever spend what they get in taxes. So the debt just goes up and up and up. And then what they say has got to be right. Our children are going to pay a price for it. Why does total U.S. debt go up every year, and why can't the deficit eventually come down to zero? Pretty simple answer, man. Democratic, liberal politicians. Country keeps voting Democrat. Look what it just did. You get more of the same. Trillions of debt. Yeah, I know. I know that under Republican regimes, the debt still went up, but they were trying to fix what the Democrats did. You can't fix it even in 8 years. The Democrats screwed up so bad that by the time the Republicans are conservative people in the Senate, they're starting to fix it. Then the country goes liberal mad again and they vote the liberals back in and we go for the shit all over again. Why does total U.S. debt go up every year? That's pretty simple, man. It's the Republicans. First thing we learned in Berkeley, civics class, freshman year, University of Berkeley. It's like a graduate degree for most other universities. First thing we learned was Republicans block Democrats. Democrats have policies that help people. Helping people costs money. If they could just help people without being blocked, without having to do the roundabout, then everything would be within the constraints and the confines of the budget. But because of Republican influences, things are never efficient. Therefore, extra trillions will eventually need to be spent to put in all the good liberal programs that this country needs. We are the shining star on the hill. First thing we learned in Berkeley Civics Class 101, man. We found that 100% of the respondents were unaware of the real answer. The answer why debt goes up year after year is because it absolutely has to. Debt is money. Money is debt. One cannot exist without the other. For an economy to grow, more debt has to be issued. More debt has to be floated. There is no other way for an economy to grow because debt and money are the same thing. If everybody paid off all their debts, all the money supply in the world would go to nothing. If anybody's wondering why an economy absolutely has to grow, because when debt is issued, the amount of money at the time the mortgage is issued, for example, the interest doesn't exist in the system itself. The interest has to be paid in addition to return of principal. Therefore, the money supply and debt must always grow to allow for the interest. What do any of the symbols mean on the back of the dollar bill, or even the Latin? Maybe if you paid me a few dollar bills to do this goddamn interview, I'd have a few to look at now, wouldn't I? I'm just doing it from memory. I guess I should know what's on the dollar bill, as many as I stuffed into bras and G-strings over the years, but who really takes a close look at it? I pass it to Bob, Bob passes it to Larry passes it back to me. I don't know. Just doing it from memory. There's an eye. There's a pyramid. There's a foreign language. There's a bird with arrows. In God we trust. Maybe I should have paid attention to my little nephew. He's a weird little effer. That my little nephew comes to the Thanksgiving table every year and he pushes his damn conspiracy shit on us all day long. He is a weird little effer. But maybe I should have paid attention to his shit over the years. Maybe it does come down to 2 words, Illuminati. It's probably all in the Da Vinci Code. I'll watch it tonight, but I can't answer your question right now. I don't know what that weird shit is. Can you interpret for us the symbolism on the back of the dollar bill? Yeah, I know. The symbology in the back of the dollar bill. I mean, of course, we must have learned that at some point at Berkeley. I just can't remember the exact year or class. But you have the Eye of Providence, of course. You have the pyramid. You have the Latin. You have the In God We Trust. You have the eagle or the phoenix. This is a piece of cake for a Berkeley graduate. I mean, all the symbols, if you want me to give you the short answer instead of extending this out, I could talk about this ad nauseum, would be all the symbols in some way relate to what the Founding Fathers knew that California would become for the Union. And probably many of the symbols and Latin actually foresee what Berkeley would be for California. So, for example, E pluribus unum, people think that means out of many comes one, but it really means, if you know the original intent of the Founding Fathers, it means out of many public schools in the California system, one emerges as the best. California University at Berkeley, go Bears. Can you explain any of the symbols that appear on the back of the dollar bill? Okay, I think I can answer that, but I have a question first. This is very confusing to me. I was told everybody here in these cubicles would be getting the same questions. Every one of us would be asked the exact same questions. I can hear the guy in the next cube. He keeps talking about his alma mater. How can talking about your alma mater actually be an answer to these questions, assuming we're all getting the same questions? That's what I was told? Sir, I assure you're getting the same questions. Okay, but it bothers me. Okay, thank you for assuring me we're getting the same questions, because what's going on in that cubicle over there is very confusing to me. The symbolism on the back of the dollar bill, I haven't done extensive research on it. I've looked at Wikipedia. I've looked at what is online. And I will tell you this, maybe I can't answer the question the way you want me to answer it, but I can tell you that none of it makes any sense to me. For example, this Eye of Providence. You look it up on Wikipedia, it'll tell you it represents the eye of God looking over America's pursuits and exploits, or associated with Columbia and the wagon trains going out west. What God? Eye of God? Oh, and it's supposed to be a secular nation. It doesn't make any sense to me. In God We Trust doesn't make any sense to me when we've been told about the separation of church and state from about 6 days old. And then you got In God We Trust. Where's the ACLU on that one? In God We, and then you also have this fictitious deity called Columbia that's somehow associated with the United States. I know she's not on the back of the dollar bill. Maybe she is represented by that bird. I don't know. But that doesn't make any sense either. When did the United States assign itself or associate itself with a deity, a goddess of some kind? So the answer to your question is, I can give you the Wikipedia answers and talk to you about Eye of Providence, but I don't believe any of that's correct. There's something that they're not telling us with that stuff. That's my answer. Now, once again, Mr. Fishman is the shining star of this particular focus group, but in terms of the results that came back from the national survey, they were abysmal. 95% or more of those that returned the national survey couldn't speak intelligently about one symbol on the back of the dollar bill, nor could they translate any of the Latin. Of course, they knew In God We Trust, but any second grader can read, so that didn't count in their favor. Of the 5% that could speak intelligently, it was down to 2 specific areas. About half knew how to successfully translate the Latin of E pluribus unum, out of many come one, and the other half knew something about the Eye of Providence. And we're going to give them full points for knowing what Wikipedia presents, which is a complete lie, but nevertheless, about half was able to parrot back what Wikipedia tells you about the Eye of Providence and what that weird eye is in the broken capstone on the back of the dollar bill. So they're getting full points there. If they didn't get full points there, we'd have almost 97.5% of those that filled out the national survey not knowing a single damn thing about one thing on the dollar bill. And it is the most important thing in their lives. Half of these people that filled out the survey dedicate their lives to getting this thing. It is true insanity, ladies and gentlemen. And we don't have time to go into all the symbols here and what they mean. But no, if you do research in mainstream places like Wikipedia, just know it will be 100% a lie. What do you know about the Federal Reserve or the Fed? Yeah, the Fed. Remember I told you about my nephew at Thanksgiving? According to him, the Fed are the people that rigged the stock market. You should hear him talk about the Fed. Now, nobody pays attention to him at Thanksgiving. He sits down there by himself. He'll try to tell you about the Fed and conspiracy. He's shoving all this mashed potatoes and stuffing into his mouth, and shit's coming out of his mouth. He's trying to tell you about conspiracy, why his mouth is completely full. And Uncle Joe sits in the middle. When he starts doing it, Uncle Joe's like, shut up with your conspiracy all the time. But he did, before Uncle Joe went off on him, he was trying to tell us about something to do with the Fed. What was it? It's like, I don't Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde Island or something established the Fed, and the whole purpose of it was to screw over the entire population of the United States. I probably should have listened to him because I do better in this questions and answers. As far as I know, the Fed was just like something that regulates banks. I don't know. Yes, of course, the Fed. Although I was a liberal arts major, I did fortunately take classes inside the Haas School of Business at the University of California at Berkeley. Haas in no way related to the Mandela-affected avocado company, which is now Haas Avocado. But the Fed, of course, is a branch of the United States government. It's part of the United States government. And it's set up, or was set up in the early 1900s, to oversee monetary policy as well as setting interest rates. This was put in place after a series of crises was cooked up, but it would have never been cooked up. They were real crises that were brought on to the U.S. dollar, creating a confidence problem in the U.S. dollar that J.P. Morgan was involved in, but in no way were these manufactured. These were real problems in confidence in the United States dollar, and the Federal Reserve was brought in to keep a strong U.S. dollar as well as keep interest rates set so the U.S. dollar maintains its strength. That is what the Fed is, and that is what I can recollect from my days back in Berkeley. What is the Federal Reserve Bank and the Fed? The Fed. Yeah, I think I can answer this one. I think I have a good answer. But I have to get this off my chest. I just have to say this one more time before my answer. I'm sorry. I have to tell you. There's something wrong with the individual on the other side of this wall here, this cubicle. I can't see him. But what's he going to start talking next about? The big game? I lived in California for 3 years. The people out there, they start talking about the big game. Well, what big game? What does that even mean? Michigan, Ohio State? No, it's Cal Berkeley against Stanford. It's nothing but, you just say the big game, and everybody's supposed to know what the F that means. Like, what? That ain't no big game. Just because somebody ran in a bunch of band members, made that game famous for one stupid play, the band came on the field. Sorry. The Fed. The Fed is the biggest fraud ever perpetuated against mankind, human race, in the history of the human race. It's something that passes itself off as federal, as part of the government, but it ain't part of the government. It's just a collection of private banks and private fat cat bankers in this private thing. And they hold a little bit of power. They can print up unlimited money. And there's no oversight by any elected official or anybody in the government. Even the Treasury Department. They could just shut the doors in their face. The Treasury Secretary, well, they're all working together. It says, I scratch your back, you scratch mine. I scratch your back, you scratch mine. It's just cronyism anyway. They all know each other. They just go back and forth probably between jobs. But just say there was somebody at the Treasury that actually cared about you, the people, he'd approach the Fed and say, I want to see your records. I want to know what you're doing. He'd get the door slammed in his face. But they're all working together anyway, so what's the difference? It's like, well, I was going to say it's like the five families and Vito Corleone, Don Corleone, but those five families were fighting for a while. This is like the five families that never fight. And the Fed, a collection of private banks and private bankers that can print up an unlimited amount of money without any oversight whatsoever. See, every once in a while, there's somebody elected to Congress. Usually it's at lower levels. The senators know what's going on. They know how to obey their corporate masters. But sometimes there's like a congressman they let in. There's like an election down the road. Congressmen go in for 2 years at a time. And they actually think that their job is to look out for the constituents, their own people. Can you believe that? and then they might get this idea that we need to propose a bill to audit the Fed. And then they get slapped down pretty quickly. They say, boy, you don't audit this thing over here that can print $1 trillion a day. The taxpayers have no say on what they do, on who's behind it, on who the fat cats. I was going to say getting rich, but when you can print $1 trillion a day, you don't need no bank accounts. So these senators and these congressmen that propose this, that actually think they have a job to do, they get smacked down. They learn real quick who their masters are. So that's my take on the Fed, the biggest scam and crime ever put forth in the history of mankind. Hey, Fishman. Fishman. Yeah, it's me, Thanos. We met in the lobby this morning. Listen, I gotta make this fast because Cal Berkeley boy is gonna be back from the bathroom in a second. But listen, I know where he parked. He parked right next to me this morning. Cal Berkeley boy, Mr. Fancy Pants here. Couldn't help but overhear your complaints about him. Well, I've been listening to his shit all day too. Tell you what, you meet me in the parking lot. I'll show you where he parked, and we will force him to say, like some school that's completely beneath him. We'll force him to say, like, the Nebraska Cornhuskers are the best or something like. You want to what? If he doesn't produce an online application to Appalachian State and submit it with a $30 fee, we'll beat his ass in the parking lot? All right. I didn't know you were that hardcore, Fishman. I'll see you out there in 10 minutes.